Looking at myself in the mirror today, you'd think I had the perfect life. The flawless makeup, the custom-fitted gown, the million-dollar smile of a bride-to-be who has everything figured out. But right now, crumpled in my perfectly manicured hands is a pathetic piece of trash. It's a letter. A begging, pleading, tear-soaked letter from a man currently rotting in a cheap nursing home, half paralyzed from a stroke. He's begging for an invitation to my wedding. He's begging for my forgiveness. He wants to walk his little girl down the aisle. I'm sorry, but that's hilarious, because the last time this man, the man whose DNA I unfortunately share, called me his little girl, he was literally throwing me out the front door into a blinding sub-zero blizzard. No winter coat, no shoes, no money. Just the clothes on my back and the sound of the deadbolt locking behind me. His exact words: "Get the hell out of my house. I don't need a sick, junky daughter polluting my family. My name is Sherry. I'm 28 years old now." But the story I'm about to tell you, the story of the absolute worst betrayal a child could ever experience, and the most satisfying, brutal revenge you will ever hear, starts when I was just 15. If you've ever dealt with a narcissistic family member, a toxic golden child who manipulated everyone around them, or a parent who threw you to the wolves, hit that subscribe button right now. Grab a snack, get comfortable, and let me tell you how my entitled sister and my deadbeat dad tried to destroy my life for a quick payout, and how I ended up legally destroying theirs instead. To understand how I ended up freezing to death on a sidewalk at 2 a.m., you have to understand the toxic hierarchy of my childhood home. We weren't a family. We were a dictatorship disguised as a suburban household. My biological mother passed away from a sudden illness when I was only 8. It shattered me, but my dad, Raymond, he moved on with terrifying speed. Within a year, he had married Jolene, a woman whose entire personality consisted of drinking cheap boxed wine and ignoring everything around her. But the real nightmare wasn't my stepmom. It was my older sister, Karen. Karen was the quintessential golden child. She was 5 years older than me, but emotionally, she was a manipulative toddler. When my mom died, my dad essentially transferred all his emotional dependence onto Karen. In his eyes, she could do no wrong. She was the star athlete, the popular girl, the princess of the house. I, on the other hand, was the scapegoat. I looked too much like my late mother, which meant my mere existence was an inconvenience to my dad's shiny new life. For years, I survived by flying under the radar. I practiced the gray rock method before I even knew what it was called. I kept my head down, got straight A's, and stayed out of Karen's way. But there was one massive, glowing target on my back that I couldn't hide: my mother's trust fund. Before my mom passed, she set up 2 separate iron-clad trust funds for Karen and me, $45,000 each. The stipulation was crystal clear. We couldn't touch the money until we turned 18, and it was strictly meant for college or a down payment on a house. When Karen turned 18, she blew through her $45,000 in less than 14 months. She bought a ridiculous, flashy sports car she couldn't afford to insure. She took lavish trips to Cabo with her friends. She bought designer bags, and when the money inevitably ran out, she didn't get a job. She got a boyfriend. Enter Trent. Trent was a walking red flag, a greasy, jobless loser who claimed he was an entrepreneur, but actually just sold stolen electronics and ran crypto scams out of his mom's basement. Karen was obsessed with him, but Trent had expensive tastes and a nasty gambling habit, and soon Karen was drowning in high-interest debt. I was 15 at the time. I was exactly 3 years away from getting access to my $45,000. And Karen, desperate and backed into a corner by her own stupidity, decided that my money was actually her money. She just needed a way to get it. Legally, the only way my dad could tap into my trust fund before I turned 18 was in the event of an extreme medical or behavioral emergency. If I needed to be sent to an expensive rehabilitation center or a specialized behavioral boot camp for troubled teens, the court would unlock the funds to pay for it. Karen knew this. She didn't just want to steal from me. She wanted to surgically remove me from the family, lock me away in a juvenile facility, and drain my dead mother's money to pay off her degenerate boyfriend's debts. And the sickest part? She almost got away with it. It was mid-January. The local news had been warning us for days about a massive winter storm moving in. The temperature was dropping fast, and the snow was already starting to pile up. I was in my room studying for a biology midterm, minding my own business. Suddenly, my bedroom door violently crashed open. It hit the wall so hard the plaster cracked. My dad stood in the doorway, his face purple with absolute rage. His veins were popping. Jolene stood behind him, swirling her wine glass, looking vaguely annoyed. And behind her, peeking over her shoulder, was Karen. Karen had her hands over her mouth, fake crying, playing the victim, playing the concerned, devastated older sister. "Get up!" my dad screamed, his voice shaking the floorboards. "Get the hell up right now, you little thief!" Before I could even process what was happening, he lunged across the room, grabbed my mattress, and flipped it entirely over. I fell hard onto the wooden floor, and there, tumbling out from a slit cut into the bottom of my box spring, was a horrifying pile of evidence I had never seen before in my life. 3 prescription bottles of strong sedatives, a fat stack of $100 bills wrapped in rubber bands, and a cheap prepaid burner phone. I froze. My brain stopped working. I looked up at my dad, terrified, and then I looked at Karen. Through her fake crocodile tears, Karen looked down at me. And in that split second, when my dad's back was turned, she smiled, a cold, calculated, dead-eyed smirk. The gaslighting had officially begun, and the storm outside was nothing compared to the hell that was about to break loose inside this house. "Dad, I swear to God, I have never seen those pills in my life. That is not my money." I was hyperventilating, backing up against my bedroom wall. My voice cracked so hard it physically hurt my throat. But my dad wasn't listening. Narcissists don't listen to reason. They only listen to the narrative that serves them best. And right now, his narrative was that his 15-year-old daughter was a degenerate junkie. "Shut your mouth," he roared, stepping closer. "You think I'm stupid, Sherry? You think I don't know what goes on in this house?" Right on cue, Karen delivered an Oscar-worthy performance. She let out a dramatic, trembling gasp and grabbed my dad's arm. "Dad." I didn't want to say anything, but I was missing $50 from my purse last week. I thought I just misplaced it. "Oh my God, Sherry, are you doing drugs? Is that why you've been acting so withdrawn?" The sheer audacity of this girl. The gaslighting was so heavy in that room, you could have lit a match and blown the roof off. Karen was the one who had literally stolen my mom's jewelry to pay off her boyfriend's gambling debts 2 months prior. But now, she was playing the heartbroken, concerned older sister. "I'm not a thief! You planted this!" I screamed, pointing at Karen. "Dad, look at her! She's lying!" My dad grabbed me by the upper arm. His grip was like a vice, his fingers digging into my skin so hard I knew there would be bruises the next day. "I am not dealing with a criminal under my roof," he spat, his face inches from mine. "I am not paying for rehab, and I am not letting you ruin this family." He practically dragged me down the hallway. I was wearing nothing but a pair of thin flannel pajama pants, a faded graphic tee, and fuzzy socks. No shoes, no winter coat, no phone. "Dad, please, it's freezing outside. Let me just get my jacket," I begged, stumbling as he hauled me toward the front door. Jolene, my stepmom, just stood in the kitchen doorway, sipping her Merlot and watching like it was a boring reality TV show. He yanked the front door open. The wind howled into the house, instantly dropping the temperature. Without a second of hesitation, my biological father shoved his 15-year-old daughter out onto the porch. "Don't come back until you're ready to confess and go to a facility," he yelled. Slam. The heavy oak door slammed shut. Click, the deadbolt locked. I stood there on the icy porch for a solid 5 minutes, banging on the door, screaming until my lungs burned. But no one came. The porch light flicked off. They had actually done it. They had literally kicked me to the curb in the middle of a level 3 winter storm advisory. The wind chill was pushing negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit, and I was in socks. Panic set in. My closest friend lived over 5 miles away, and my grandma Dorothy, my mom's mother, lived 3 towns over. I had absolutely nothing on me. I didn't even have 50 cents for a payphone, not that I could even find one. So I started walking. If you've never experienced severe hypothermia, let me tell you, it plays terrifying tricks on your mind. For the first mile, the cold felt like millions of tiny needles stabbing into every inch of my exposed skin. My feet went completely numb within 10 minutes. My fuzzy socks were soaked through, frozen solid into blocks of ice around my toes. By the second mile, I couldn't stop shaking violently. My teeth were chattering so hard I chipped a molar. By the 3rd mile, the scariest thing happened. I stopped shivering. The pain started to fade, replaced by a strange, heavy warmth. My brain was shutting down. The snow was blinding, the wind was deafening, and all I wanted to do was lie down in the snowbank and take a nap. Just a quick 5-minute nap. I stumbled near the edge of a closed gas station parking lot. My knees buckled. I hit the ground hard, my cheek resting against the freezing concrete. The darkness started closing in. I honestly thought that was it. I thought Karen had won. Hey, oh my God, hey, stay with me! A car door slammed. Heavy boots crunched rapidly through the snow. Someone grabbed my shoulders and flipped me over. The last thing I remember before blacking out completely was the blast of hot air hitting my face as someone dragged me into the back seat of an SUV. I woke up with an IV in my arm, wrapped in 3 heated blankets. The pain of my blood circulating again was excruciating. Sitting in the chair next to my bed was a woman I didn't recognize. She looked to be in her late 40s, wearing a heavy parka, holding a cup of bad hospital coffee. When she saw my eyes open, she leaned forward. Easy, honey. You're at St. Jude's Medical Center. You were about 20 minutes away from freezing to death out there. Her name was Brenda. She was the one driving the SUV. But Brenda wasn't just a random Good Samaritan passing by. The universe has a funny way of delivering exactly what you need when you're at rock bottom. Brenda was a veteran social worker, a mandated reporter for Child Protective Services, CPS, who was on her way home from an emergency late-night case. I already ran your name, Sherry, Brenda said, her voice gentle but firm. And I called the emergency contact listed on your old school files. She's on her way. Before I could even ask who she called, the hospital room door swung open. If you're picturing a sweet, cookie-baking, sweater-knitting little old lady, erase that image right now. My grandmother Dorothy was a 65-year-old force of nature. She was a retired CPS supervisor, a chain-smoking, sharp-tongued, titanium-spined matriarch who knew the family court system better than most judges. She marched into the room, took one look at me hooked up to the IVs, and her eyes filled with tears. But those tears didn't fall. They instantly turned into cold, calculated rage. She walked over, kissed my forehead, and then looked at Brenda. They actually knew each other from the old days. Dorothy, Brenda sighed. She had no coat, no shoes. Her core temp was dangerously low. And she told me her father kicked her out because he thought she was doing drugs. Dorothy pulled up a chair, her eyes locking onto mine. Sherry, look at me. Tell me exactly what happened. Every single detail. Do not leave anything out. I told her everything. The sudden raid, the pills, the cash, the burner phone, and Karen's weird, triumphant smirk. I watched the gears turning in my grandmother's head. As a former CPS supervisor, Dorothy had seen every flavor of child abuse, manipulation, and fraud. It took her exactly 3 minutes to piece the puzzle together. The trust fund, Dorothy said quietly. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. What? I croaked. Dorothy stood up, pacing the room. Karen blew her money. She's in debt with that low-life boyfriend of hers. Your dad can't touch your $45,000 unless it's a medical or behavioral emergency. They need a paper trail, Sherry. They need a documented history of you being a delinquent. They planted that stash so they could call the cops, get you a record, ship you off to some awful juvenile boot camp, and petition the court to drain your trust fund to pay for it. The realization hit me like a freight train. My own father was willing to let me freeze in a blizzard just to create a fake narrative. He was willing to destroy my entire future so his golden child could pay off her debts. I started to cry, not from sadness, but from a deep, burning betrayal. What do we do, Grandma? I can't go back there. Dorothy stopped pacing. She pulled her phone out of her purse. Her expression was terrifyingly calm, the kind of calm that happens right before a hurricane makes landfall. You are never going back there, sweetheart, she said, dialing a number. I am filing for emergency temporary custody as of this exact second. We are going Grey Rock. We give them absolute silence. She looked back at me, her eyes flashing with a vindictive fire. They wanted to play games with your life? Fine. But they just messed with the wrong kid, and they severely underestimated the grandmother. We're not just going to survive this, Sherry. We're going to lawyer up, and we are going to burn their little house of cards straight to the ground. The first rule of dealing with a narcissist is that you never, ever let them know what you're planning. You don't argue, you don't defend yourself, and you certainly don't warn them before you drop a nuclear bomb on their life. It's called the gray rock method. You become as boring, silent, and unreactive as a gray rock. For the next 4 weeks, my Grandma Dorothy's house was a fortress. The morning after I was discharged from the hospital, my dad filed a formal petition in family court. His goal? To have me legally declared an uncontrollable delinquent, mandate me to a lockdown rehabilitation facility, and, you guessed it, petition the judge to liquidate my $45,000 trust fund to pay for it. To back up his absurd claim, he actually drove to the local police precinct and handed over the evidence they found in my room: the burner phone, the cash, and the pills. He thought he had completely outsmarted us. He thought he had the ultimate slam dunk. But what my dad and Karen didn't realize was that handing that fake evidence over to the authorities was the single stupidest thing they could have possibly done. Because once it was in the system, my grandmother's high-powered family lawyer, a ruthless woman named Evelyn, could legally subpoena the discovery. And oh boy, did we discover a lot. My dad tried to contact me multiple times. He sent his flying monkeys, aunts, uncles, and family friends who had only heard his twisted side of the story to leave me guilt-tripping voicemails. "Sherry, your dad is just worried about you," they would say. "Just come home, confess to your drug problem, and let your family help you." We ignored every single one of them. Radio silence. We let my dad build his fragile little house of cards, completely unaware that we were already dousing it in gasoline. Evelyn, the lawyer, started with the burner phone. Now, Karen wasn't exactly a criminal mastermind. She was a spoiled 20-year-old whose brain had been thoroughly deep-fried by reality TV and bad decisions. She assumed that just because a phone is called a burner, it's completely untraceable. Wrong. Evelyn pulled the IMEI number from the phone and requested the activation records. The phone had been purchased exactly 48 hours before I was thrown out into the blizzard. Where was it bought? A local CVS pharmacy less than 2 miles from our house. A quick subpoena to the CVS management yielded the security footage from that exact date and timestamp. I'll never forget sitting in Evelyn's office and now watching that grainy video on her laptop. There was Karen, clear as day, wearing her obnoxious bright pink North Face jacket, handing the cashier a $50 bill to pay for the exact same burner phone my dad later found under my mattress. "Strike one," Grandma Dorothy muttered, taking a sip of her black coffee. Next was the cash. The stack of $100 bills that my dad claimed I had stolen to buy drugs. Remember how Karen was completely broke and drowning in debt? So where did she get a thick stack of fresh, crisp hundreds? Evelyn hired a private investigator to do a soft background check on Karen's recent financial activities. It didn't take long to hit the jackpot. 3 days before the setup, Karen had used a high-interest credit card to take out a $1,500 cash advance. The transaction was made at an ATM inside a local gas station. And guess what? ATMs have cameras. We had the bank statement. We had the timestamp. We had the photo of Karen withdrawing the exact amount of money that was later planted in my room. "Strike two," Evelyn smiled, sliding the printed ATM photo into a thick manila folder that we affectionately started calling the binder of doom. But we needed the final nail in the coffin. We needed the origin of the pills. And for that, the universe decided to hand us a beautiful, shiny gift wrapped in a bow. While we were quietly building our case, Karen's scumbag boyfriend, Trent, finally ran out of luck. A week before my scheduled family court hearing, Trent's mom's basement was raided by local PD and federal investigators. It turned out his little crypto side hustle was actually a massive multi-state wire fraud and identity theft ring. Trent was staring down the barrel of a 10-year federal prison sentence. When you put a cowardly fake alpha male like Trent in an interrogation room and threaten him with a decade in a federal penitentiary, he doesn't stay loyal. He sings like a canary. He spilled his guts to the detectives, offering up anyone and everyone he knew in exchange for a plea deal. Through her CPS connections, my grandma found out that Trent had admitted to selling stolen prescription sedatives. When the detectives asked him who his buyers were, Trent happily threw his own girlfriend under the bus. He gave a sworn statement that Karen had bought 3 bottles of sedatives from him, explicitly bragging to him that she was going to use them to frame her younger sister and steal her trust fund so they could pay off Trent's gambling debts. I want you to really picture this. My dad and Karen were going about their lives, feeling completely victorious. They had the flying monkeys on their side. They thought I was a terrified, broken teenager hiding in my grandmother's basement. They honestly believed they were going to walk into family court, put on a sad performance, and walk out with a judge's order to hand over my $45,000. Meanwhile, sitting on my grandmother's dining room table was the binder of doom. It held the CVS security footage, the ATM cash advance photos, and a sealed, certified copy of Trent's sworn police confession. We had them dead to rights. They had committed perjury, fraud, child endangerment, and conspiracy. And they had absolutely no idea that the guillotine was already hovering right above their necks. The day of the hearing finally arrived. I put on a conservative navy blue dress, tied my hair back, and walked into the county courthouse holding my grandmother's hand. I looked across the hallway, and there they were. My dad wearing his best suit, Jolene, looking bored, and Karen, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, already warming up her fake tears for the judge. When Karen made eye contact with me, she gave me that same cold, calculating smirk she gave me on the night I was thrown into the blizzard. I didn't look away. I didn't cry. I just looked right back at her. And I smiled because I knew something she didn't. I knew that in about 15 minutes, her entire life was going to be completely destroyed on public record. Family court is not like the courtrooms you see on TV. There are no surprise witnesses bursting through the doors at the last second. It's usually cold, bureaucratic, and depressing. But today was going to be an absolute bloodbath. My dad had brought an entire audience, 3 of my aunts and 2 uncles, the ultimate flying monkeys who had been leaving me those nasty voicemails, were sitting directly behind him in the gallery. They were whispering to each other, shooting me and my grandmother looks of pity mixed with disgust. In their minds, they were here to support a heartbroken father doing the tough love thing for his addicted teenager. My dad was sitting at the petitioner's table with his cheap lawyer, wearing a dark suit, looking incredibly stoic. Karen sat right behind him, wearing a modest pastel-colored cardigan. She had practically scrubbed off her makeup to look as pale and exhausted as possible. It was a masterclass in manipulation. I sat at the respondent's table with Grandma Dorothy and our lawyer, Evelyn. Evelyn was wearing a tailored crimson suit. She looked like a shark that had just smelled blood in the water. The binder of doom rested neatly in front of her. The judge called the room to order. My dad was called to the stand first. Watching your own parent lie under oath is a surreal experience. It's like watching a stranger wear your father's face. He looked directly at the judge and spun a web of absolute fiction. He talked about how I had become withdrawn, how I was stealing to support a hidden habit. "Your Honor," my dad said, his voice actually cracking with fake emotion. It broke my heart to lock her out that night. But she was out of control. The pills, the burner phone, the cash. I had no choice. She needs to be in a secure behavioral facility, and her trust fund is the only way to finance it. I'm just trying to save my daughter's life. A collective, sympathetic sigh echoed from the peanut gallery of aunts and uncles behind him. My dad stepped down, looking incredibly pleased with himself. Next, it was Karen's turn. Karen took the stand, clutching a tissue. She sniffled. She dabbed her eyes. She testified that she had been missing money and that she was terrified of what I was becoming. "I just want my little sister back," she whimpered, looking right at me. "Thank you," my dad's lawyer said, taking his seat. The judge looked over his glasses at our table. "Does the respondent have any cross-examination?" Evelyn stood up. She didn't rush. She slowly buttoned her crimson jacket, picked up the binder of doom, and walked to the center of the room. "We do, Your Honor," Evelyn said. Her voice was smooth, but it carried a lethal edge. Evelyn walked right up to Karen. "Miss Karen, you testified that you were deeply concerned about your sister's alleged drug use, correct?" "Yes," Karen squeaked. "And you have no idea where the burner phone, the cash, or the pills found under her mattress came from?" "No. I assume she bought them." Karen was playing it cool, but I saw her hands gripping the wooden railing of the witness stand so hard her knuckles were white. Evelyn nodded, turning back to her binder. She pulled out a laminated piece of paper. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit Defense Exhibit A. This is a subpoenaed activation log and purchase receipt for the exact prepaid burner phone the petitioner submitted to police. It was purchased at the CVS on Elm Street, exactly 48 hours prior to the incident." Evelyn then pulled out a flash drive and handed a printed still frame to the judge. "I am also submitting Defense Exhibit B. This is time-stamped security footage from that exact CVS checkout lane." Evelyn turned to Karen, holding up a copy of the photo for the whole room to see. "Miss Karen, is that you in the bright pink North Face jacket purchasing the exact phone you claim your 15-year-old sister secretly bought?" The silence in that courtroom was so heavy it could have crushed a diamond. Karen's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked like a deer caught in the headlights of a semi-truck. I don't," Karen stammered. "Let's move on," Evelyn said, not giving her a second to breathe. The pacing was ruthless. "Your father submitted exactly $1,500 in $100 bills, claiming Sherry stole it. Miss Karen, did you or did you not take out a $1,500 cash advance on a Visa credit card 3 days before this incident?" "Objection!" my dad's lawyer shouted, half standing up. "Relevance?" "Overruled," the judge snapped, leaning forward. He was staring at Karen intently now. "Answer the question, young lady." Karen was physically shaking. I I needed money for rent. Rent? Evelyn raised an eyebrow. You live at home rent-free. But let's clarify that. Your Honor, Exhibit C. Bank records and ATM camera footage of Karen withdrawing the exact amount of cash found in Sherry's room. I looked at my dad. The smug, confident posture was completely gone. The color had violently drained from his face. He was looking at Karen like she was an alien. But Evelyn wasn't done. She saved the nuclear bomb for last. Finally, Your Honor, the pills. Evelyn pulled out a thick, sealed document with a federal law enforcement insignia on the front. Exhibit D, a certified sworn affidavit from the local police department and the FBI task force. It is the official confession of Trent Miller, who is currently awaiting trial for federal wire fraud and illegal distribution of prescription medication. When Karen heard Trent's name, she let out a loud, audible gasp and covered her mouth. Evelyn read directly from the transcript, her voice booming across the silent room. When asked about the distribution of Schedule IV sedatives, Mr. Miller confessed to selling 3 bottles to his girlfriend, Karen. Quote, "She told me she was going to hide them in her sister's room to get her sent away, so her dad could drain the kid's trust fund and pay off my debts." End quote. Your Honor, Evelyn said, closing the binder with a loud snap. My client isn't a delinquent. She is the victim of a coordinated malicious conspiracy to commit fraud, child endangerment, and grand larceny, orchestrated by her own sister and facilitated by the gross negligence of her father. Evelyn sat down. Karen completely lost it. The golden child mask disintegrated. She burst into genuine, ugly, hysterical tears. Dad, it wasn't like that. Trent is lying. She's framing me, she screamed, Wayne pointing wildly at me. But my dad didn't look at her. He didn't comfort her. He just stared blankly ahead, completely paralyzed by the realization that he had thrown his innocent daughter out to freeze to death based on a sociopathic lie spun by his favorite child. The judge didn't even need to recess to make a decision. He was livid. Petition denied, the judge barked, banging his gavel. Not only is this petition entirely baseless, but I am granting immediate, full, and permanent custody of Sherry to her grandmother, Dorothy. Furthermore, the judge pointed a pen directly at Karen, who was hyperventilating on the witness stand. I am referring this entire transcript, along with Exhibits A through D, to the district attorney's office. Perjury in this court is a felony. Filing a false police report is a crime. You people are a disgrace. As the court adjourned, absolute chaos erupted in the gallery. The flying monkeys who had come to support my dad were now aggressively whispering and storming out, thoroughly mortified. My dad stood up, looking like a ghost. He took a step toward our table, reaching a hand out toward me. Sherry? My God, Sherry, I didn't know. I swear to you, I didn't know. Grandma Dorothy stepped right in front of him, blocking his path. She didn't yell. She didn't scream. She just looked him dead in the eye and delivered the coldest line I have ever heard. You didn't know, Dorothy said quietly, because you didn't care to ask. If you ever come within 50 feet of my granddaughter again, I won't use a lawyer. I'll use a shotgun. I linked my arm through my grandmother's. I didn't say a single word to my father. I didn't even look at Karen, who was sobbing loudly, begging her lawyer for help. I just turned around, pushed through the heavy wooden doors of the courtroom, and walked out into the sunshine. I had survived the storm, and I had won. They say karma is a mirror, but in my family's case, karma was a high-speed freight train with no brakes. Following the judge's order, the district attorney didn't hold back. Karen was formally charged with perjury and filing a false police report. Because she was a first-time offender, she avoided actual jail time. But she was hit with a massive fine, hundreds of hours of community service, and most importantly, a permanent felony record. If you want to know how fast a golden child falls from grace, just watch them try to apply for a corporate job or sign a lease on a nice apartment with a felony fraud conviction hanging over their head. Trent, her knight in shining armor, was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Karen was left completely broke, working miserable minimum wage jobs just to pay off her court fees. As for my dad, his downfall was a lot quieter, but arguably more pathetic. Once the illusion of his perfect, wealthy, in-control life shattered, Jolene packed her bags. She was only ever there for the comfortable lifestyle, and the moment the legal bills started piling up and the neighborhood gossip began, she filed for divorce and took half of everything he had left. He lost his reputation, his wife, and eventually he had to downsize out of the family home. He spent the next decade living in total isolation. I stewing in the reality that he had completely fumbled his own life just to protect a daughter who was actively scamming him. Which brings us back to today. 13 years later, I'm 28 now. I used my trust fund exactly the way my mom intended. I went to college, got my degree in child psychology, and bought a beautiful little house. And tomorrow, I am marrying the love of my life. But there was still one loose end to tie up. This letter. A week ago, my dad suffered a severe stroke. It left him partially paralyzed and permanently confined to an assisted living facility. I guess staring at your own mortality in a sterile hospital room has a way of making you regret your life choices. He found out I was getting married through an old family friend, and he had a nurse write this letter for him, begging me to visit, begging to be at the wedding. So, yesterday, I went to see him. I walked into his room. He looked so small, so incredibly frail. He wasn't the terrifying, booming dictator who threw me into a blizzard anymore. He was just a sad, broken old man. When he saw me, he started to cry. He reached out with his good hand, whispering my name, telling me how sorry he was, how he was blind, how he wanted to make things right before he died. I stood at the foot of his bed. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't feel an ounce of the anger that used to keep me awake at night when I was 15. I just felt peace. I walked over, gently placed his tear-stained letter on his bedside table, and I looked him in the eyes. "I forgive you," I said softly, and I meant it. "I forgive you for what you did, because holding on to that anger was only hurting me. But forgiveness does not mean access." He looked at me, confused, his tears still falling. "You are not coming to my wedding," I continued, my voice steady and firm. "You are not going to be a part of my life, or my future children's lives. I wish you the best, but this is goodbye." I turned around and walked out of that room, and I never looked back. A lot of people will tell you that family is everything, and that you should always forgive and forget because blood is thicker than water. Let me tell you a secret. That is toxic garbage. Blood doesn't make you family. Respect, safety, and unconditional love make you family. Sometimes the healthiest, most empowering thing you can do for yourself is to look the toxic people in your life dead in the eye, draw an iron boundary, and go completely no contact. Tomorrow, I'm walking down the aisle, and I won't be given away by a father who never protected me. I will be walking down the aisle arm in arm with my grandma Dorothy, the woman who actually saved my life. If you're out there right now, stuck in a toxic household, feeling like you're the crazy one because you're the only one seeing through the gaslighting, please hear me. Keep your head down. Make your plan, document everything, and the second you can safely get out, you run and you never look back. Your peace of mind is worth more than their approval. Thank you so much for letting me share my story. If this helped you, or if you've survived a narcissistic family member yourself, sound off in the comments below. I read every single one. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Stay strong, set your boundaries, and I'll see you in the next video.